I want to go ahead, Jay. I want to continue on with the rest of my stream, the last part of my stream, and that is talking about the worst TV shows of 2022, in my honest opinion, chat. Now, thankfully, I didn't see that much bad TV this year. Most of the TV that I saw was pretty good, and even like the shows I'm about to talk about, maybe they weren't altogether like just outright terrible. And I think in a variety of ways, they disappointed. May have had some good elements there. I want to highlight some of those good elements, obviously. But these were shows at the very least that I found to be lacking in quality or just were not very good. And that suffered in a number of ways. And, the first of those TV shows I want to talk about, Chad, it's one that I'll admit, that's why it's ranked here at number 5, because I didn't finish watching it, but what I'd seen, I was disappointed by, Chad. And number 5, I have Halo. I did watch another episode of this just to be like, okay, let me at least give this another shot. Let me watch as much as I can before I kind of put this list together. So I watched a total of 3 episodes of the Halo series, chat, and I'm like, that's enough. That was enough after 2. I should have called it at 2. I was like, let me give you another chance. I was like, nope. Now, of course, for those who don't know, Halo is based off the very popular Halo video game series. And there have been multiple attempts to adapt the games for quite some time. I think the last time they really tried to do a proper adaptation was when Peter Jackson was producing the film and Neil Blomkamp was supposed to direct it. Now, that movie fell through, and he went on to direct District 9, which is a great film. You can actually see some of the concept footage that they had shot, and you see like the Halo movie would have looked like. And then they've done like web series since then. I think there was one with like Mike Coulter from a few years ago that was, I mean, fine. It was okay at best, I would say, not very good, but. This is the Paramount Plus show where they did invest a lot of money into it. And, even though it occasionally has moments where it's like, oh, this is good, cool looking, aesthetically very pleasing, the thing that's just so disappointing about this show is the writing and the characters. One of the biggest pet peeves that I have with this series is that, well, listen, the Halo games, it's like the stories are competent. They're not great, but you can certainly add to them. You can definitely improve upon them, but you can still have a very similar structure. This adaptation forgoes the games, and it kind of acts more like the books, or they have like 2 different timelines going on in the Halo universe. They have one where it's very much the games, and then they have like the book timeline. And this is in its own separate timeline as well, and it's kind of cherry picking from both the books and the games, but it's also clearly being written by people who I don't think have any that much experience with the games to begin with. And I have a variety of issues with this show. One, because of just the tropes that it indulges in. Like, I have nothing against hey, this is a common trope we've seen a lot, chat, in video games across all sorts of media. We're gonna take a main character, we're gonna pair him with a kid, little girl, little boy. My only ask is that if you do that, is that you don't make the little girl, the little boy, just a fucking snot-nosed brat who is just so thoroughly unlikable that every time they appear on screen, I'm just like, ugh, I'm just sighing, chat, because their obnoxiousness is so terrible. And that's what this show does. For at least what I have seen, it pairs the Master Chief with this obnoxious character who every time they appear on screen, I'm just like, can you just kill them? I know they went through a traumatic thing. I know they don't like the UNSC you pick a reason. I get it. But my Lord, can you just crack a smile? It just very annoying. And now the other big part of this, the show, I think that bothers people is the fact that, Master Chief is not with Cortana for a good part of it. And you would think, like, what would be great? A great way to start the series and to have, like, a really fun relationship the audience can get invested in is Master Chief and Cortana and their interactions with each other. That would be great. Because Master Chief, he's this guy he's typically very stoic. He is very dry. There's no doubt about that. As the games have gone on, he's gotten more of a personality. But Cortana, she's bubbly, she's smart, she's sassy, she's got everything that you want in a supporting character and a main character, Chad, someone that you like to follow. And that is completely absent, absolutely absent from this series. Like, why don't you just start the show with that? Why are you pairing Master Chief with someone who is so thoroughly? I'm not blaming the actress either who plays that character. You know, this survivor of this massacre, okay? It's just what's being written for. It's like you're almost, the writers want you to dislike her. I'm like, I don't really understand that. You know, because so often you're pairing these two. It's like, well, conflict breeds interesting situations. I'm like, yeah, but not where you have one character who's boring as dirt and the other one who's just pissed off for the sake of being pissed off. That's not very interesting. That's frustrating. And that's what bothered me about the show. Like, I mean, yes, you can experiment with the lore. You can change some things around. I'm not holier than thou when it comes to Halo lore. But, I mean, just get some of the basic elements right when it comes to writing a TV show. and this one just fails at it. And, you know, the other thing is, too, like, one of the big aspects of Master Chief is, like, he doesn't take off his suit, doesn't take off his helmet, and there are a variety of lore reasons why. My whole thing is, if you're going to do that, then make sure, like, that moment when it does happen is of importance. And the way in which they do it is almost like, here, I'm taking my helmet off, just trust me. And it is just kind of used as an aside. I'm like, yeah, that was not handled very well. And I know how apparently this show wraps up. People are very disappointed in it. But from what I've watched, Chad, which, again, to be fair, it's why I put this last. You know, I was almost thinking of maybe Anna as an honorable mention, but I was like, yeah, let's make it a nice 5. That's why this is, to me, the 5th worst TV show of 2022. A disappointment for me, Chad. A disappointment for me. And now we get to the rest of these shows I have seen entirely, Chad. I've seen them in their full context. And at number 4, we have The Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power. It's not a very elegant name. Now, this is what I will say about the show, to be positive at the front. The money is on full display. This is a very beautiful show. The production design is very good. There's no doubt about that. You know, I think it's almost like a little too sleek, though. If I have any criticism of the production design, it's too sleek. It's too clean. It doesn't always look lived in. It feels like I'm on a set occasionally, but there's a lot of cool things with this. The problem that this show has is that the characters suck. The characters are incredibly one-note, one-dimensional. They don't have really interesting dynamics or relationships. It takes way too long to get to the story. We're just, waddling around with the elves and the dwarves and the dirty, stinky humans and the orcs and the hobbits, or in this, they're called the Harfoots. And they're like, and they're just walking around like, when are we going to get to the story? What is the... It takes, so I think by episode 5, maybe we figure out, like, oh, what the main story is. At that point, it's like, why did you take 5 hours to tell us what the fucking plot of your show is? That, to me, is that's unforgivable. Like, Lord of the Rings, like, the Fellowship of the Ring got to what the main story is pretty quickly. I mean, the extended editions of the Fellowship of the Ring is like, what, 4 hours? And so we're about already done with the Fellowship of the Ring, and we're about a third of the way into Two Towers by the time that Rings of Power actually gets into its actual story. And that, to me, is just an example of really sloppy writing. It's like, get to the point. And the other thing about the show, which really frustrates me, it has this mystery box element where we're setting up all these mysteries, but they're mysteries that we already know about. Like, you look at something like Andor, like, case in point, look at, like, what Andor did, right? Or House of the Dragon, right? We know how those shows all are eventually going to end, what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen to a lot of those characters in House of the Dragon because Game of Thrones, and they've talked about it in the Game of Thrones show, and they've referenced it. It's like, oh, okay. In Andor, we literally know what happens to Cassian Andor, all right? But the thing about those shows that works is, like, the characters and the stories are interesting. All right, the dynamics between characters are constantly changing. The plot is moving forward. Like, for so much of the Rings of Power, the plot is absolutely not moving forward in any capacity. You know, it's like the creators of this series seem more obsessed with just, I don't know, talking about the lore and the history, which, you know, it can be interesting. But you got to weave that through the central narrative, bro. You got to have like a direction that you're going in. And for so like the big reveals in the show, it's like, oh, they're trying to create Mordor. It's like, okay. Oh yeah, this character's Gandalf. And I'm like, what? Okay. I mean, you're hinting. The thing is, they hint at these things for like episodes, for hours. Like when we find out, like, oh, this character may or may not be Gandalf, it takes 8 hours for them to kind of go, yeah, they're definitely Gandalf. I'm like, why did you take 8 hours to tell us something that was very obvious in the beginning? Or Sauron. Another big mystery is like, who's Sauron in this show? And it's like, well, all these other characters where you will have thought, like, oh, is this person Sauron? No. Is this person Sauron? No. A process of elimination. It's like, well, this other guy, plus he's been saying a lot of creepy shit throughout this entire series. I'm pretty sure that guy's Sauron. So when it does happen, it's like, wow, that was disappointing as all hell. So yeah, it is, and you know, I did not want to be one of those people that, because yeah, there are certainly people that are hating on the show because I don't care that you have different races and ethnicities playing fantastical creatures, you know, dwarves. I don't care that we have black elves or black dwarves or what. I don't give a shit. That doesn't bother me at all, you know. But you gotta do they gotta do interesting things with all these characters, and so much of this show they don't. I feel like the dwarves have the best storyline in this show. I really like them. They have person. The elves are boring as shit. I'm like, they are. I think the fact that they're immortal, they're always whiny and they're mopey and they're always going on about how great their homeland is. It's like, I don't give a shit. All right, just stop it. Be proactive in this world. And the Harfoots are just gross, and the humans are even grosser. Just really shitty. The elves are just brooding. Always brooding, and yeah, it was disappointing. You know, I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings movies. I love the original Hobbit book, and I was very hopeful for this show. I didn't want to go in. You know, I was ignoring all the skepticism people have, but after watching it, I mean, we were doing watch parties for it, and eventually I was like, I'm just kind of done. I finished it up off stream, and I was like, yeah, this wasn't worth it. I'm glad we stopped watching it. It's just at the end of the day, it's boring. It's really boring. When you compare it to House of the Dragon, which is very similar. It's also a fantasy show, chat with a lot of characters. But the thing is about House of the Dragon that's very different from Rings of Power is that has three-dimensional characters. That has characters who have various subplots and who have political machinations or backs of each other. The relationships are constantly changing episode over episode, and that's what keeps it so interesting to watch. It's not the fact that it's a fantasy show. It's not the fact that they have battles occasionally. It's not the fact that they have dragons. It's that it's because it's about characters. And Rings of the Power is not about characters. And in no capacity is it about character. It is about spectacle. It's spectacle and showing you how much money we spent on this scene and this set. And I'm just like, you can't, no. I'll go elsewhere for my spectacle, thank you. So it was very frustrating. So yeah, Rings of Power, definitely one of the worst TV shows one of the most disappointing TV shows of 2022. And hey, chat, I got some more fantasy fare on this list, or at least sci-fi fantasy fare. And let's go ahead and bring up The Book of Boba Fett. God damn it, chat. I was hoping this show was going to be great. Initially, I think it started off really strong. Where finally Boba Fett's going to get his due. He had that great reintroduction in The Mandalorian Season 2. It was like, whoa, you have Tamara Morrison as Boba Fett. He's doing all these badass things. He's messing up stormtroopers. It's like, okay, here we go. Now he's going to get his own show. Oh, you're going to do it like it's King Conan, chat, where he's sitting on that goddamn throne. He's going to be like the Godfather. It's going to be a mob story where he's like, I'm done with bounty hunting. I'm going to become a crime lord, okay? That's what I'm going to do. I'm fat. I'm old, and I'm going to rule Tatooine and all of Jabba's various assets. I'm like, what a great premise. You know, I mean, Jon Favreau, who's the producer of the show, is like, yep, it's going to be a mob story with Boba Fett at the helm. I'm like, that sounds cool. It is not a mob story at all. I mean, the first two episodes where we see, like, what happened to Boba Fett, you know, after he got eaten by the Sarlacc, and he came, which was great. He fucking exploded out of the Sarlacc, you know, he set it on fire and all that shit. Love that. And then he's taken in by the Tusken Raiders, has this almost like adopted family. I actually really like those episodes. Very Dances with Wolves. I was like, okay, but then we're going to get to, like, you know, the crime stuff afterwards. Nope. Then after that, we just kind of get Boba Fett waddling and tripping around trying to rule a single city on Tatooine. I think, where is he? In Mos Espa? He's in Mos Espa, and he enlists the extras from Spy Kids and Power Rangers to help him rule Mos Espa, chat, and he gets into really weird, awkward fights with an evil Chewbacca. And then like the Hutts get involved, and then they like say, "Oh, we apologize. We're just gonna go. Here's a pet Rancor," which you're probably gonna ride at the end of the show. But see you later. Bye bye. And then the series stops being about Boba Fett for a while. And we're like, hey, what happened to The Mandalorian? Which is really the Boba Fett show, right? And we just have a whole episode about The Mandalorian, which is probably the best episode of the show. It's really good. It's really good. And then we get like another episode after that where Boba Fett like says one line. And then we have a whole setup about like, oh, what happened to Grogu? Where's Grogu? And here's Luke Skywalker, and here's Ahsoka Tano. I'm like, this is called the Book of Boba Fett. Where's Boba? He's missing for 2 of the 8 episodes in this show, or however many. No, was it less than that? How many episodes were in this series, chap? And we eventually come back, and we get some cool stuff. Hey, Cad Bane, live action Cad Bane, that's cool. Oh, he's dead. Fuck. He's riding a Rancor. That's neat. But it's more of just a setup for Mandy and the Kids season 3. And then at the end of the show, Boba Fett's like, you know what? I don't really want to be a crime lord anymore. You never were. You never were a crime lord. I thought, these first episodes, I'm like, I really like this. It's pretty good. Okay, it's solid. And then they lied. They lied about the premise. It wasn't that. And to me, it is the unwillingness of Lucasfilm, maybe Disney, but I think like Lucasfilm, it's like they didn't want to make a show about an unlikable, at least with Boba Fett. I think they eventually did with Andor, because Tony Gilroy has infinitely more power, I feel like. But they didn't want to show us that man with no name, that dubious morality that Boba Fett had, Like, he's not evil, he's not good. He's like, you pay me to do a job, I'm going to do that job. He has his own code and everything, and that's what makes him interesting, like in the novels and the comics, which I have read. I like the character from that. It's like in the movies, yes, he's barely a character. He's an action figure. I'll admit that. But I'm thinking like you're going to borrow from all these books and novels and short stories and comics that made me fall in love with the character, made me say like, no, he is cool. We just haven't seen it in live action. And you fucking dropped the ball completely. And you're just like, Boba Fett, he loves banthas. He loves Rancors. He's just in his fucking bathtub. And I was like, what is this? So frustrating. And 2 out of the 8 episodes, it's not even about him. Maybe you should just call this the Book of Star Wars. Like, we're gonna catch up on all these different characters. In that case, I'm like, okay, so we'll focus on Boba Fett. But yeah, and it's sloppily directed. A lot of the action. There's some cool action scenes in this. Sure, there's some cheap shit in this. If anything, Robert Rodriguez again is that. I mean, do not give that man any. Listen, I'm not a big Robert Rodriguez fan. I think I've liked maybe I did like his what the hell was it, El Mariachi, and I liked Battle Angel Alita. That was pretty good. I think he did too much in that, but pretty good. But I'm just like, yeah, don't have him come back here ever again. Don't have him do Star Wars. It's such a lost opportunity, such a missed opportunity of this character. I don't know if they're going to do a season 2. I think even Timur Morrison says like he wants to do it, but he wants to kind of go back to Boba Fett being this kind of morally gray character. I was like, yeah, that's what you should have done. If they ever want to go back, I would say this: get the kid who played Boba in the prequels, get him and do those stories where he was that morally gray Clint Eastwood man of no name character taking on jobs, and yeah, he's not that likable. This show, much like another show I'm about to talk about, should have been more like Andor. It's like where Andor is a spy series. It's about, what it's like to live under fascism in the Star Wars universe. This show should have been about, what is the underworld like in Star Wars? What is crime like, especially in a galaxy that is, currently under the control of the New Republic, but they're not doing a very good job ruling it. And it's like you have all these crime families that are propping up and setting up their little dictatorships and their power structures, and their warlords on all these different worlds. That would be really interesting to see explore Boba Fett and his exposure to that. But they don't do that. They never once fucking do that, and it's very frustrating. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But chat, yeah, this one hurt. This one hurt for me, I have to admit, but not as much as Obi-Wan Kenobi. This was the one that I was like, oh, yeah, Book of Boba Fett was disappointing, but this is the one that's going to work. They're bringing back Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's one of the best things about the prequels. Not everything that he did his best. It was not his fault. It was the direction. It was the writing. This is going to be the one. You're bringing in the director of some of the best episodes of Mandalorian season 1 to showrun this show, direct all this. Oh, she's gonna do a great job. And what we got, chat, aside from the first episode, and aside for a couple of moments, was probably some of the most disappointing Star Wars content from the Disney era so far. The thing that I kept saying about this series is, why is this show not focused on the relationship between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker? They said it was going to be focused on them. And there is so much of this show where it is not. They barely talk to each other. The first time they have a conversation is like the last episode. And I'm thinking, why are you not having them talk? Because I want that, because that would be so interesting. To find out, like, this is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. Obi-Wan is in the worst place of his entire life. He's disconnected from the Force. He's fucking miserable. He's working at a goddamn sandy butcher shop, looking after this kid, you know, out in this little moisture farm. And then he gets wrapped up, but then something happens. He has to get wrapped up, and he has to go, battle his apprentice again for whatever reason. But no, and that would have been such a great opportunity to show like the change of their relationship, how they viewed one another, and just to have them like talk to each other. And that's hardly there. And the times they do talk to each other in this series, it's great. Like the last episode where the duel is, by the way, the action in this, fucking sloppy. Whoever, the editor, and you know what? I mean, the choreographer, the thing is, the choreographer, I'm sure, did a really good job. But for whatever reason, the editor and how this was, and the cinematographer should be fucking fired. They did such a terrible job shooting this show. And the action scenes where we're cutting the camera and we're like moving around like this, and we're cutting above them, and then we're right here, and then we're over here. It's like, what? Just keep it still. The one thing I'll praise about George Lucas and his direction in the prequels, he kept that camera steady. He kept that camera steady during the fight scenes. I could see for the most part what's happening. You know, not so much Attack the Clones, but in Phantom and Revenge of the Sith, that camera's there. I'm like, all right, I see what's going on. And in here, terrible. It looks like a fan film. It's so much of this show looks like an overproduced fan film, and it should not. This show had a lot of money, and so much of it looked fake. And it's like, this is supposed to be the rematch, and as Kathleen Kennedy said, this is the rematch of the century. And they really, I mean, that last battle was fine. It had some cool moments, but again, it was underserved by its really shitty cinematography and editing. Awful. Both of those people should have been fired. If I was looking at the dailies of this show and I saw like this is how you're shooting all the fight scenes, I'd be like, who the fuck is the editor and who's the cinematographer? Get rid of them. Terrible. And then the other part of it is, chat, so much of the show is just not focused on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. It's focused on this new character named Reva, which they set up as this mystery, which is very obvious to what she actually is and how she's actually involved in everything. And then with the Leia Organa character, who they bring in, which initially I wasn't bothered by, but then there's just stuff with her. And the little actress was fine. It was just how they shot her. Like, the amount of times that I hate this. This is a pet peeve. Stop having little kids get captured in movies and TV shows. I'm just done with that. I stopped seeing it. And it happens once. I'm like, it happened once. Okay, fine. But it happens multiple times in this show. But these guys, everyone struggles at least to initially catch her, even though she's like, barely running. But these criminals, Obi-Wan Kenobi, these stormtroopers, they just can't get her. She's always slightly out of reach. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Every time they have those scenes of her waddling away and they're like, I can't catch her. It was so unintentionally funny. So unintentionally funny. Oh, God. I mean, again, it has its moments. I really liked Joel Edgerton, who was briefly in the series in the first and last episode, as Owen Lars. Really, it really changes your perspective on the Lars and what they did and what they sacrificed for Luke. I liked that. That was cool. But those moments were few and far between, like the conversation that Hayden Christensen, who's in the suit, and that conversation when Obi-Wan and him, like Vader, gets fucked up, and Obi-Wan, and it's a great moment too. It's just like we need more of these moments where he's like, Anakin, I'm sorry for all of it, you know? And Vader is like, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan. I did. And it was like, oh, that I love that. That was so, we need more of that. And they don't, because we're focused on these other stories that have nothing to do with them. And I'm not against like doing a show that is, you want to do a miniseries? Then hey, make it 3 episodes and it's focusing on Obi-Wan and Vader. Just do that. Why does this show have filler? You have an entire episode where, again, Leia is captured and it's this prison escape episode that you could cut that out completely and you don't need it. You wouldn't even know it's missing. And you're like, oh, we have the sacrifice of these characters you don't give a shit about after they brought on themselves. And then the last big thing with this show, which, spoilers. I mean, everyone see it. If you haven't watched it yet, you're not going to watch it all. But, like, why doesn't fucking Obi-Wan then kill Vader? He just walks away. Like, they do. It doesn't make any sense. Then you have plot holes. Where then, when Obi-Wan, you could say, Revenge of the Sith, he's like, well, he fucking is burned to death on the side of a volcano. He's probably going to die. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to take his lightsaber and shit. But this one, now you have a second chance. And the fact he's like, oh, well, I guess my friend is truly dead. Bye-bye, everybody. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And the whole thing is like, oh, well, and then he adds to the whole thing with Luke, where it's like, well, yeah, your father was killed by Vader. Because Vader himself said he killed. It's like, don't do that. He had every opportunity to kill Vader right there. He was weakened. He wouldn't be able to fight back. And you're just creating yourself another plot hole. Because then Obi-Wan's like, by the time we get to like Return the Jedi, where Luke is like, first of all, why didn't you tell me that my dad was Darth Vader? And he's like, oh, from a certain point of view, your dad was killed by Vader. It's like, what? From a certain point of view. And then where Luke is like, I don't want to kill my dad. Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, well, the Empire and the Emperor have truly won. You goddamn hypocrite, Obi-Wan. You could have ended it all right there. It doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid. You create more problems. And that's why it's the second most disappointing. I can go on. I'm not going to keep going on, chat. But that's why it's the second most disappointing and the most terrible TV show of 2022. But number one, Chad, none of them hold a candle. None of them hold the shit candle that this show holds, which is Netflix's Resident Evil. Now, listen, we have gotten a lot of bad Resident Evil adaptations over the years. Live action, animated, Chad. I mean, what last year we had the newest Resident Evil reboot film. Horrible movie. Probably even worse than the Paul W.S. Anderson films, honestly. And all the other ones he directed and produced and shit. But with this show, I knew ahead of time what I was getting into. Years before they started filming this, I was sent scripts for this first several episodes of this series. And I mean, already it was like, yeah, this is not really adapting the games at all, even though it includes some of the characters in the games, maybe in a way. I don't know. It's much like the Paul W.S. Anderson movies. It's doing its own thing. It's just Resident Evil only in name. But what I couldn't believe was just if anything that this show, and reading those scripts initially, let me say, don't give up on your dreams to be a screenwriter or become involved in the film industry, Chad, the TV industry, because these scripts were so poorly written. It's like, I could do better than this. Any of you guys in the chat could do better than what these writers did. It is schlock. It is terrible, filled with some of the worst dialogue imaginable. The premise of the show, it takes two different timelines. One timeline, it's set years after the events of a lot of the mainline Resident Evil games, after Resident Evil 5 and 6 and all that shit. It's like in the 2020s, I want to say. Albert Wesker, who is played by Lance Reddick. And the thing is, Chad, like they've said throughout the marketing of this show, they said that, no, this is an actual sequel to the video games. This is an actual sequel to the games. I'm like, well, why is Lance Reddick then Wesker? Because Wesker is a white man. And why is he alive? He fell into a volcano. I'm like, I had some questions already. But I'm like, I was like, they were like, shut up. We're not done talking about what the premise is. And I'm like, okay. But Wesker is alive again, post-volcano. He's a dad. He's a dad, chat. And he has 2 daughters. And I'm like, okay. And the Umbrella Corporation has reformed, and they've established an entire fucking metropolis in South Africa. And I guess everyone forgot about all the horrible things Umbrella did, and everyone's consuming Umbrella products again. Like it's no big deal. And Wesker, known fucking terrorist, a bioterrorist who has tried to take over the world multiple times. Like everyone knows who Albert Wesker is in this world. He is also the head of the Umbrella Corporation. And he's a soccer dad, and he drinks kombucha, and he's thinking about going vegan. And I'm like, what is this show? What are you doing? And then you have his daughters, whose name Billy Jean. I think her name is Billie Jean. I forgot the other one. I don't know the other one's name. One's talking about and it's a typical, it's again, tropes. One daughter is quiet and sensitive and hiding a dark secret and is probably crazy. And the other one is a rebel and is just shitty for the sake of being shitty. And even when you have someone who's like legitimately being nice and who's like, I made cupcakes, and it's like, hey, what? Like you have this one character, like they're moving in their house, and you have this one character who is like a hostess. She's like, hey, I made some baked goods for you. They're vegan. There's no glucose. You, Wesker's one of your daughters. What do you like to do? She's like, I like to read Zootopia porn. And I'm just like, oh my. And the thing is, that was in the original scripts. I actually had the original scripts out when I was reading them. Actually, I had my computer screen. But I was looking side by side. They didn't change any of it. They changed like the moments at which some of it happened. Like some of it was out of order, but for the most part, it was word for word. I was like, wow, this got past multiple executives, multiple writers, multiple directors and everything. And they said, yeah, that works. That's good enough. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. And the rest of the show is it. And then the other half of it is Walking Dead. It's just The Walking Dead where it's like, hey, Umbrella fucked up again. Oh, really? And most of the world is overrun by zombies and monsters. The caterpillar was cool. I did like the caterpillar moment. But yeah, everyone's just living like, Rick Grimes and Coral from the Walking Dead. And it's like, The Walking Dead is not Resident Evil. Okay? Resident Evil is very different than The Walking Dead. Why do you the only reason why it's in there is because people went, well, people fucking love watching The Walking Dead. Let's just turn Resident Evil into The Walking Dead. It's not the same goddamn thing. Okay? All right? It's different. That's what makes it cool. And that's why it stands out. I don't want every zombie property or everything that has zombie-esque creatures or monsters to be like The Walking Dead, because that would be boring. All right? All right? But that's what we got with this show. It's terrible. It got canceled. Good. It deserved to get canceled. And it has random ridiculous. I just can't. There's a scene where, oh my god, there's a whole dance and song. There is a musical number in this movie, and it comes out of fucking nowhere. And like the characters, like the audience, like, what is happening? What's the point? It's just meant to be because it's weird, it's crazy, and it's like, but what does it serve the plot? It's like it's fun. It's like, fuck you. So. You're right, Bill Casey. Every executive wants their Walking Dead. Netflix wanted a Walking Dead. They thought they can use it for Resident Evil. That did not work. So, yeah, this was this is by far this. I watched all of this. I think it's like 8 episodes. I think it's 8, and they're long. They're long. They're like 50 minutes each, and I'm like, oh, I just had it in the background. I was I was editing stuff, and I was like, oh my god, but I watched it. Terrible, chat. Yes, Netflix's Resident Evil to me is the absolute worst TV show of 2022. Put it on the pile of all their stinky, terrible, bad Resident Evil adaptations, Jeff. But there you go. That was my top 5. Again, not many. And some of even the shows I brought up, they had their moments. This one didn't. But some of them definitely had their moments, chat. And I imagine maybe some of these shows I brought up you actually did like. Let me know what your most disappointing ones, your worst ones were. Maybe you disagree. Let me know why. I'm curious. I'm very curious, but thank you. But thank you. What about you, chap? What are your most disappointing TV shows, worst TV shows of 2022? This is very entertaining. Thank you, Cristando. Thank you. Worst show, this one. Oh, Naya, no. Why is Chris being so aggressive with us? I'm not being aggressive with you. Oh, let me see what you guys are saying. Oh, my God. He just got extra crispy. Wesker. Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot about this. Holy shit. I got to include this. Hold on. All right. Another thing. So it's weird that they say this is an actual sequel to the games because, you know, Lance Reddick plays Wesker. And Lance Reddick is a fine actor. But to me, it's like you just did this for stunt casting. Like you wanted to generate a reaction, whether it was good or bad. Because to say like, this guy's Wesker, and he's the exact character from the games. This is the actual sequel to the games. I'm like, what? But there's a moment in the show where I'm like, oh, I actually see what you're doing here. Because we find out, and this is a big spoiler, Jay, it's a big spoiler, that he is not the original Wesker. He's a clone of Wesker. And I'm like, oh, okay, because we find out that Wesker's daughters, they came from two different mothers, and I'm like, oh, that's why they look different. And so you're going to have it where Wesker, in an effort to prolong, you know, his bloodline and, you know, his power, what he did was he basically just made another copy of himself, but the mother was black, and it's like, oh, that's why he looks different. No. They had an out. It was like I'd be like, you know what? I accept that. That's fine. But that's not what they do. Because then we see later on, like in this and we're back at fucking Umbrella in the Arklay Mountains, even though, you know, Raccoon City, in the ruins of Raccoon City, which is all radioactive, by the way. But we're back there. It's basically Chernobyl 2.0. And we see all the other Weskers. We get the one Wesker, Lance Reddick, who's like there. We got another Wesker who's like dreadlocks. We have a fat Wesker because he's eating all the time. But then, Chad, we were gonna meet. I was like, okay, this is weird. So I guess they all have black mothers. All right, sure. But then it's like, oh, the original Wesker shows up. And it is Lance Reddick in a Blade outfit, like dressed up like Wesley Snipes from the Blade Trinity. And I'm like, why? And they have him in this terrible Tyler Perry wig, this flat top that looks like it's glued to his head. And I'm like, why are you doing this? You had an out. It would make sense. I'd be like, oh, that's why he looks the way he does. But no. I couldn't believe it. It was so funny, but also terrible. That made me laugh. That was a highlight because I was like, I can't believe you did this. But yeah, chat. Yeah, another reason why Resident Evil was not a very good show. Blesker. Yeah, Fatsker, all of them. It was fun. I just want to Blade Wesker. It was amazing. Yo, wait, true. Yes way. Oh, my God. What about the rest of you guys? What are some of your worst shows, best shows of the year?